forces are likely to become so overstretched by coronavirus that 999 response times will have to be extended, and that even investigations into some murders will have to be halted as a result of this?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are not at that stage or anything like that stage yet. Our police forces, he knows, our police forces are well able to cope with all types of eventualities, and they have long-standing arrangements to prepare them for such pressures.
Mr. Speaker, under this government, there are 2 million workers on low pay, many of them women in the care sector, who are not eligible for statutory sick pay at the present time. The Prime Minister's statement just now it's not clear whether it covers them or not. And those on Social Security could face sanctions if they miss appointments, and therefore they and their families will face terrible hardship. When the Prime Minister brings forward the emergency legislation, will he guarantee that workers' right to sick pay from day one, as he's just indicated will apply on statutory sick pay, will apply to all claimants, and those people that are not currently eligible for statutory sick pay, therefore will have to make a terrible choice between health and hardship?
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman is raising a very important point, and of course we are very much aware of the issues faced by the self-employed on those on 0 hours contracts. I should stress that some of them will be entitled to statutory sick pay. Others, a great many, others will be entitled to help through the existing systems such as universal credit. And we are urgently looking at the application process to reflect on the advice on self-isolation. But I think the members of the public have appreciated the way hitherto that I think the members have come together across the floor of this House to deal with this crisis. And I think it would be common ground between us all that we want to do everything we can to avoid penalising those who are doing the right thing.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is not being clear about this. The reality is, if you're on universal credit or just put onto it, you've got a 5-week wait before you get any benefits. Will he be absolutely clear that nobody will have to choose between health and hardship? Because it's a matter of public health concern for everybody. Mr. Speaker, our part-time Prime Minister failed to turn up on Monday to answer a question about a breach of the Ministerial Code. In his own foreword to that code, the Prime Minister wrote, "There must be no bullying and no harassment." Will he now commit to an independent investigation into the Home Secretary's conduct, led by an external lawyer, and commit to a date when its findings will be made public?
Mr. Speaker, of course it's right that there should be an investigation into any allegations of bullying. That's what the Cabinet Office is doing. That's what Sir Alex Allen will, of course, be doing. But I just remind him, since he mentions the Home Secretary, that she is keeping this country safe by putting in record numbers of police officers. She believes in stopping the early release of offenders, and she's bringing in a system to tackle our migration crisis with an Australian-style points-based system. He would scrap stop and search. He believes in getting rid of our security services, and he certainly wouldn't tackle our immigration system, Mr. Speaker.
Jeremy Corbyn.
It's about whether he will release the findings of an investigation into the Home Secretary's behaviour. I repeat to him, a government cannot be judge and jury over its own conduct. There has to be an independent element to that investigation. Overnight, Mr. Speaker, further allegations have emerged that the Home Secretary repeatedly harassed and humiliated her private secretary while she ran the Department for International Development. If this is true, this suggests a shocking and unacceptable pattern of behaviour across 3 government departments. On each occasion, tens of thousands of pounds of hard-earned taxpayers' money has been spaffed up the wall to buy their silence. Was the Prime Minister aware of these allegations? And if he was, why did he appoint her?
Mr. Speaker, I'm really going to repeat the point I just made. The Home Secretary is doing an outstanding job. I have every confidence in her. If there are allegations, of course, it is right that they should be properly investigated by the Cabinet Office, and that is what is happening. But I take no lessons about bullying, Mr. Speaker, from the leader of a party where female MPs were bullied so badly in the matter of anti-Semitism they actually left the party, and where the Shadow Chancellor has still not apologised for his call for a member of our party to be lynched.
The Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said if there are allegations. Is he completely unaware of all the allegations that have been made over the last few days? Is he completely unaware of the resignation of a permanent secretary because of his treatment by the Home Secretary? Mr. Speaker, we have a part-time Prime Minister who barely turns up but is determined to cover up for bullies in his government. There can't be one rule for workers across this country and another one for him and his ministers. When his Home Secretary has been accused of repeated bullying and harassment, leading to hard-working staff attempting suicide by overdose, he gave her his full support. How can the people of this country have faith in a Prime Minister who can't be bothered to turn up, and when he does, has no shame in defending bullying in his own government?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is the question from a full-time neo-Marxist who's failed to stamp out bullying in his own party. And actually, I'm very proud, as I say, of the record of this government just over the last 82 days. We've taken back control of our borders, our laws and our money. We've got Brexit done. We've set out a new points-based immigration system. We've put more money into people's pockets through the biggest ever increase in the living wage. We've guaranteed more funding for schools by increasing the minimum funding for every pupil. We've restored the nurses' bursary, introduced a bill to set a record cash boost for our NHS, and ensure there will be a free hospital car parking for everybody who attends a hospital. And we're delivering gigabit broadband for the entire country. That's just, to say nothing of the police that we're recruiting, Mr. Speaker, that's just in the last 82 days. We're getting on with delivering the people's priorities.
My constituents in East Surrey care enormously about climate change. Would my right honourable friend agree that yesterday's news that the UK carbon emissions have been reduced by a third over the last 10 years is a fantastic and important Conservative achievement? And will he set out his plans to continue this progress?
I will indeed. I thank my honourable friend. I will today chair the first ever Cabinet Committee on Climate Change in recognition of this government's revolutionary commitment to cut to net zero by 2050, one of the many ways in which the government is leading Europe and the world in tackling climate change.
Ian Blackfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And like the Prime Minister, I note the 2-year anniversary of the terrible attack in Salisbury, and it's important on these matters and other crises that we face, such as coronavirus, where appropriate, that we do stand together. Mr. Speaker, coronavirus is causing deep and genuine concern across society. We know that up to 80% of the population are at risk of infection. All of us must provide clear, calm and practical leadership in the days, weeks and months ahead. In the past few days, Scotland's First Minister, the Scottish Government and the Westminster Government have been working closely together to put plans in place to protect all of our people. Yesterday, the Governor of the Bank of England suggested a financial bridge may be available to assist markets through any volatility. If there is a financial bridge for markets, can the Prime Minister tell us, will there be a financial bridge for all workers, and indeed those that rely on benefits that should not risk the threat of sanction if they can't make appointments.
Well, I thank the right honourable gentleman for the excellent cooperation that Scotland, indeed all the devolved administrations, have given in preparing the battle plan. And yes, and ready to recapitulate my answer to the right honourable gentleman, we will take every step that we can to ensure that businesses are protected, that the economy remains strong, and that no one, whether employed or self-employed, whatever the status of their employment, is penalised for doing the right thing.
Blackford.
Well, I thank the Prime Minister for that answer, and I commit my party and our government in Scotland to work constructively together. Of course, people are worried about their health, but there are millions of workers who are worried about the consequences for their incomes, their job securities and their families. But I do ask that the Prime Minister gives specific guarantees, and certainly we will work together with the SNP in pushing for emergency legislation, but clarification that all workers will be fully protected from the first day of sickness, and that those payments should be up to the level of the real living wage. And emergency legislation to guarantee that staff that are asked to self-isolate and their businesses are fully supported. That is the leadership that is required, and I ask if the Prime Minister will commit himself to working constructively with all of us to that end.
Well, again, I thank the right honourable gentleman for the spirit in which he raises the question. He will have seen from my earlier answer that what we are indeed doing is advancing the day on a temporary basis, advancing the day by which you are eligible for statutory sick pay from the fourth day to the first day. I think that is the right thing. And again, I repeat, we will support business. We will make sure that we keep the economy strong. No one should be penalised for doing the right thing. And I'm sure that my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, will be happy to engage you with further conversations with him about the detail of how we propose to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow is St Piran's Day, when Cornish men and women around the world will be celebrating our national saint and all things Cornish. St Piran is also the patron saint of tin mining, but mining is not just something assigned to Cornish history. Is the Prime Minister aware that significant deposits of lithium have been identified in Cornwall, which provides the opportunity of levelling up the Cornish economy and providing the UK with a domestic supply of this critical mineral? Will the Prime Minister commit his government to enabling Cornwall to make the most of this opportunity and wish all Cornish men and women a happy St Piran's Day?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This country, as my honourable friend knows, leads the world in battery technology, and it is a wonderful thing that Cornwall is indeed boasts extensive resources of lithium, and we mean to exploit them. I know that there's no more passionate champion of Cornwall. I wish him a happy St Piran's Day, and Kerno Bisviken, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week's historic judgment against Heathrow expansion found that his government broke the law by ignoring the Paris Climate Agreement and by breaching its own sustainable development duty to future generations when it drafted the airport's national policy statement. Will the Prime Minister tell the House today precisely how many of the government's other national policy statements have been assessed against the Paris Climate Agreement, and will he commit right now to reviewing and, if necessary, revising all of those which have not?
I thank the right honourable lady. She can take it that we will ensure that we abide by the judgment and make sure that we take account of the Paris Convention on Climate Change. But I do not believe for 1 second that that would be the impediment to our delivery of an infrastructure revolution across this country.
Sean Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, communities like mine in West Bromwich West are grateful for this government's commitment to 366 police officers for the West Midlands. But would my right honourable friend reaffirm that, unlike the Labour PCC, who's decimating communities like mine in Tipton with the closure of our police station, that it's this government who's committed to keep our communities safe through investment in the police and tougher sentences for the criminals that are ruining the lives of my constituents in Tipton?
Thank you very much. And that is precisely why my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, is working so hard to recruit 20,000 more police officers, to enhance stop and search powers, and that's why we've set out plans to build more prisons and keep violent and sexual offenders in prison for longer, Mr. Speaker. And I'm delighted that the West Midlands, thanks partly to his lobbying, is receiving another 366 police officers.
I note that in the interest of public safety, the government has taken emergency measures to rush through legislation to ensure that those convicted of terrorist offences serve their full sentences. Given the far smaller conviction rate and far more substantial rate of reoffending for those convicted of sexual offences, will the Prime Minister commit to a wider sentencing review so that communities can rest assured that sex offenders who pose a threat to children and women are serving their full sentences to ensure their rehabilitation?
Well, can I congratulate the Honourable Lady on what she has just said, which I think may have come as a bit of a bombshell to some of her colleagues, but she is entirely, perhaps on the front bench at any rate, she is entirely right, and that is what we are doing, as I said in my earlier answers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask my right honourable friend if he commits to making sure that Blythe Valley benefits from the government's ambition to unite and level up across this fantastic country?
Yes, I can indeed, Mr. Speaker, and I can indeed, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we're supporting the Ashington to Blythe to Tyne rail line. And the start of our £500 million investment in connecting towns whose stations were closed during the beaching cuts, amongst many other benefits that we are going to bring to the people of Blythe. I thank him for his support. We are going to repay the trust and confidence of those people by investing in their communities.
Mr. Speaker, Carbon Homes, a registered social landlord, has over 30,000 homes in the north and north-east. Detailed research that they have conducted shows that the 5-week delay in universal credit payments ensures that many families amass huge rent arrears before receiving anything and are trapped in debt for years. 72% of their tenants on universal credit are now in significant rent arrears, over half of them technically destitute. The Prime Minister's mantra that work is the route out of poverty is true only if there are jobs that are full-time, permanent and decently paid. When will the Prime Minister going to stop this deliberate policy of inflicting impoverishment and destitution on tenants of the Carbon Homes and other registered social landlords in the North East?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to study the particular case that he raises, but universal credit is available from day one, and I stick firmly to my belief that the best route out of poverty is not benefits but work, and it is I think what we have achieved with this government is record low unemployment and record gains in employment across the country, and wages are now rising. Wages, they don't want to hear it, Mr. Speaker, but the truth is wages are now rising for the low paid as well.
Peter Bell.
Mr. Speaker, last Thursday, at the dead of night, the Prime Minister made a secret visit to Kettering General Hospital. No media entourage, this was no photo call. He'd come to listen. He listened to staff, he listened to patients, and he left at 3:30 a.m. And Mr. Speaker, one patient said, "I thought Boris was a bit of a dopey bloke who doesn't really know what's going on. But he was a lovely bloke and actually caring to all other patients." Prime Minister, what did you learn from your listening visit?
I learned what a wonderful staff we have in the NHS, and I'm delighted to say that Kettering General Hospital NHS Foundation will receive £3.7 million seed funding for a full redevelopment, in addition to the £46 million that we are now putting into their urgent care hub. This is the party of the NHS, delivering on the people's priorities in Kettering and across the country.
Matthew Panico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of clarity, if the Cabinet Office inquiry into allegations that the Home Secretary breached the Ministerial Code establishes that her conduct fell below the standard expected of a Government Minister, in any way and on any occasion, can the Prime Minister confirm that she would be expected to resign or be removed from office.
Mr. Speaker, I return to the point I made earlier, which is that the Home Secretary is doing an outstanding job delivering change, putting police out on the streets, cutting crime and delivering a new immigration system, and I'm sticking by her.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having knocked on doors across Stafford in my constituency, it is clear that the A&E at County Hospital is a vital local service. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that A&E units at medium-sized hospitals like County are essential for the future delivery of care in our NHS?
Mr. Speaker, the Health Secretary, my right honourable friend, has just told me, passing the ball swiftly down the line, that yes, her A&E is certainly staying open. I thank her for the point that she makes.
Resignation of an experienced civil servant.
Yeah, go on,
Sacking of a government aide. With this government, it seems that allegations of bullying or just being incompetent get you promoted, whereas standing up to it, you lose your job. What does this say about this Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I loathe bullying, but I'm not taking any lessons. I'm not taking any lessons from a party that has presided over systematic bullying and discrimination against those who stick up for the Jewish community and for Israel in this country. And we've still yet to hear a proper apology from the Labour Party, from the Labour leadership, for what they've done.
Mr. Speaker, the Taliban have resumed their attacks in Afghanistan, and today the US have undertaken defensive airstrikes, undermining the fragile peace deal which will see the release of thousands of prisoners and the continued export of opium to extremism. Does my right honourable friend share my concerns that no peace deal can bypass the Afghan government, and give me his assurances that we will stand shoulder to shoulder with Afghan women who have already lost their lives just to fight for dignity under Taliban rule?
We of course stand shoulder to shoulder with the government of Ashraf Ghani, and she is right, by the way, in what she says about women in Afghanistan. It is one of the great achievements of this country, despite all the sacrifices that we experienced in the operations in Helmand, that millions of women in Afghanistan were helped into education thanks to the interventions of this country, and we can be very proud of what we did.
Hello. Colonel Monaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're all becoming increasingly concerned about COVID-19, the coronavirus. But every week, 650 of us come here from every part of the UK, spend several days operating in close proximity and meeting people from all over the world. We then return to our constituencies, potentially becoming the very vectors that we're trying to shut down. Parliament must stay open, but what plans does the Prime Minister have to utilise systems such as conference calls and electronic voting to ensure that we do not become part of the problem?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she's raising a very important point. And the Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Scientific Advisor, together with my honourable friend, the Health Secretary, will be saying a little bit more in the next couple of days about what we are going to do to delay the advance of coronavirus in Parliament and in other large gatherings. And I think we're still at the containment stage. She will understand the distinction that the government is making. When we come to the delay phase, she will be hearing a lot more detail about what we propose to do with large gatherings and places such as Parliament.
My constituent Tom Channin was just 18 years old when he tragically died at the Eden Rock complex in Mallorca in July 2018. This was an incident that was totally preventable and avoidable. It came just 5 weeks after Tom Hughes from Wrexham fell to his death at the same site in similar circumstances. Nothing had been done to make the site safe. An independent surveyor's report has pointed to serious health and safety deficiencies. Tom's parents, John and Kerry Channin, have been campaigning for a criminal case to be brought against those responsible. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, use all his influence to press the Spanish authorities to pursue a criminal prosecution that will not only seek justice for Tom, but would also send a clear message to other accommodation owners in Mallorca to prevent similar tragedies occurring in the future.
Well, I thank my right honourable friend very much for raising what sounds like an appalling case, and I can certainly say that, and I'm sure the whole House will join with me in expressing our deepest sympathies to Tom's family and friends, and to get justice for Tom, to seek justice for Tom. I am very happy to ask the Foreign Office to begin talks first with him and then, of course, with their Spanish counterparts.
Mr. Speaker, last month a young man from my constituency was fatally stabbed, and just this weekend another young man was stabbed in Coventry. Violent crimes in the city is rising, yet I only have 10 police officers in my constituency, some of which I share with my Coventry colleagues. Seeing as the Prime Minister made such a big deal about his 20,000 new police officers, can he tell my constituents whether we are going to get our fair share?
Yes, well, the Honourable Lady is absolutely right to raise the issue of stabbings and violent crime, which I agree with her are too high and must come down. That's one of the reasons why we're increasing the number of police officers in this country. And as she will have heard in the House just now, in the West Midlands, that number is going up by 366 immediately.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will be aware that due to coronavirus, demand for air travel has decreased around the world. Is he aware that due to slot allocation rules, there are perverse incentives on airlines to fly half-empty planes around the globe so as not to lose those particular lucrative slots? Will he seek a derogation for UK airlines from these international rules, if only for the sake of the environment?
Well, my honourable friend raises a characteristically brilliant point, which I confess that it hasn't been drawn to my attention so far, but I will look at what he is saying. It certainly seems crazy that planes should be flying simply to retain the slots to which they are entitled, and we will see what we can do.
Liz Campbell.
The Prime Minister promised on the steps of Downing Street to fix the crisis in social care. We need an extra 580,000 care workers, not to improve services, but just fill existing vacancies and meet the basics of growing demand. Even if the government funds increases in the pay and status of carers, where on earth are we going to find all these extra staff when EU workers will be excluded under his new immigration system? Our and the NHS depend on...
Order! Order! I make the decisions. Please, we want shorter questions. No, just finish. When I get up, please give way. Very quickly.
Will he meet with me to discuss a special migration route into social care to stop the current crisis getting even worse?
Well, I don't know quite what she means by excluding EU workers, Mr. Speaker, since there are record numbers of EU workers currently in this country, and indeed more can come until the end of the year when they can register. And I have every confidence that we will solve the issue of social care. We will be bringing forward plans very shortly, which I hope will attract cross-party support to make sure that everybody gets the dignity that they need in old age, and nobody is forced to sell their home.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend with righteous zeal has acted to curb the early release of terrorist prisoners, but he must know that those plans will put at risk by malign bourgeois liberal judicial activists. So will he, in the spirit of our wonderful new Attorney General, urge an urgent review of the legislative means they use to do their work to put our people at risk and the government's plans in jeopardy?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is certainly true that I think that people have been let out far too early, far too often. And that's why we're not only looking now into stopping the early release of serious sexual and violent offenders, but that's why we have already produced legislation to stop the early release, Mr. Speaker, of terrorist offenders.
Geoffrey Donaldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will be aware of continuing concerns in Northern Ireland amongst business about the Northern Ireland Protocol. will the Prime Minister agree to meet with a cross-party delegation of Members of Parliament representing Northern Ireland and business representatives to discuss with us his commitment to maintain unfettered access to the UK market for Northern Ireland business?
Mr. Speaker, I have no difficulty at all making such an undertaking because, after all, it's very clear from the protocol that unfettered access for Northern Ireland will continue.
Order. I have granted leave to the Right Honourable Member for South Northamptonshire to make a personal statement following her resignation from government. I remind the House that interventions are not allowed and that there can be no debate arising from such statements. I call the Right Honourable Andrew Lett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to use this personal statement to place on record what an incredible job this is and to encourage others, particularly women, who are thinking about public service, that you really can make a positive difference. Since 2010, we've lived through 3 general elections, 3 referendums. I've worked for 3 different Prime Ministers and even had just 2 tilts at the top job myself. And during that time, we've learned a lot. First, there's the value of a punchy catchphrase, from long-term economic plan, remember that? To take back control, to get Brexit done, or as we like to say, got Brexit done. But it's the action behind these words that has given us the highest employment there's ever been, a superb Conservative majority, and a free and independent United Kingdom. I've also learned the value of knowing exactly what you're voting for. So, for example, colleagues, if your whip tells you as a newbie MP to go through the eye lobby and vote for something called the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, just say no. And the Chamber has learned a lot about Erskine May, from the precise meaning of forthwith to the specific purpose of an SO24, and even how a Speaker should vote in the event of a tie. But the key lesson for me has been the importance of focusing on your beliefs and behaving with honour, whatever the cost. When I arrived in this place, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, if not strictly youthful after 25 years in finance, my ambitions for what I called my 3 Bs, Brussels, banks and babies. Brussels, or Brexit, started out as an enthusiastic attempt to reform the EU from inside. I set up the Fresh Start project with my honourable friend for Daventry and my right honourable friend for Camborne and Redruth, with support from 200 colleagues. We set out the case for EU reform, but it soon became clear that that wasn't on offer, and the rest is history. Now, this time coincided with my first ever rebellion against a 3-line whip, as one of 81 Conservatives to vote for a referendum on EU membership, leading to media speculation that I had told the Chancellor, George Osborne, if you'll forgive me, Mr. Speaker, to F off. Well, I can assure you that there is only one person to whom I might be tempted to provide such frank advice, and that wouldn't include any former or current Chancellor, and certainly not any current Speaker. My second B, banks, was a personal mission after seeing the damage done by the financial crisis and Labour's lack of oversight. As a new MP elected to the Treasury Committee, I could hold the banks to account over LIBOR rigging, stop their plans to scrap chequebooks, and also challenge our brand new, as was described at the time, rock star Bank of England governor over QE and the euro crisis. City Minister was my first job in David Cameron's government, working to introduce new pensions freedoms, setting up the ring fence for banking groups, arranging for the Post Office to provide banking services on the high street, and actually recovering over £1 billion from the Icelandic government after the bailout of iSave. And then after David Cameron's excellent win in 2015, I was moved to energy, with my good friend Amber Rudd as Secretary of State, we rebalanced the needs of the fuel poor with speedy growth in renewables. We announced that coal would come off the grid entirely by 2025. And we kept the lights on through one of the tightest winter energy margins ever. And that was the year of Paris COP21. And it's a real source of pride to have joined that global effort to tackle climate change. And I wish my right honourable friend, the member for Reading West, huge success as COP President when the UK plays host later this year. Mr. Speaker, the result of the EU referendum in June 2016 is right up there with England winning the World Cup for rugby 16 years ago. It's right up there with the look on John Bercow's face when I told him to apologise for calling me a stupid woman. And it is a bit behind the happiness of my wedding day. But not surprisingly, the leadership election that followed is also forever etched in my memory. My own part in Brexit was always about doing what I thought was best for the UK. And whatever has been said about it, my decision to withdraw from the final two was to give the country the urgent certainty that it needed. I'm tempted to say something about a mother, but I'm just not going there. But as the new Environment Secretary in 2016, it was amazing to be setting up the huge Brexit project in the department to deliver for farmers and fishing communities the bright future they were promised. Developing the 25-year environment plan, banning sales of modern ivory, creating the first ever litter strategy, and introducing CCTV in slaughterhouses. They were just a few of the highlights. But throughout the time I spent in her cabinet, I fully supported my right honourable friend for Maidenhead in her determination that Brexit should mean Brexit. And during my 2 years as Leader of the Commons after the 2017 election, the challenges of a hung Parliament became so evident right from day one. Delivering pizza was hard enough. Delivering Brexit proved nigh on impossible. But in spite of that, we amazingly achieved royal assent on almost 60 bills and passed over 600 pieces of secondary legislation to prepare for Brexit. But like the proverbial swan, whilst we were gliding on the surface, the business managers were paddling furiously underneath. And I pay tribute to each of them and to my superb private office. When the harassment and bullying scandal hit Parliament in 2017, I was so proud to pull together the cross-party coalition that devised the Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme with a clear goal that everyone who works in or visits Parliament should be treated with dignity and respect, and that confidentiality should underpin everything. And as leader, I had one of the most beautiful offices in the palace, whose only limitation was the rat living in my waste paper basket. So when a legislative slot appeared for the Restoration and Renewal Bill came along, we grabbed it. Preserving this iconic palace as the seat of our democracy for future generations will be a huge achievement for all those involved, and I wish them success. And a long-awaited change that I was so glad to introduce was to give all members of this House the same rights as workers across the country, and that is to spend time with their newborn or adopted babies, which we did via a new proxy voting system. Which brings me to the third of my 3 Bs, babies. As many in this House know, better support for the early years is essential to levelling up, to solving health inequalities, and to promoting lifelong emotional well-being. In 2011, I launched the 2001 Critical Days campaign, with support from every party in this House, from many members of the other place, and from almost every early years stakeholder. Frank Field, the late Dame Tessa Jowell, the honourable members for Washington and Sunderland, for Manchester Central and for Brighton Pavilion always worked on a cross-party basis, and I'm grateful to them. I set up PIP UK as a charity that would provide support across the country for families struggling with a new baby, and I pay huge tribute to my honourable friend for East Worthing and Shoreham, who took over my early years campaigns and charity responsibilities when I joined the government, and he's done a brilliant job for so many years. And as Leader of the Commons, the former Prime Minister asked me to chair an interministerial group looking at early years, how the government could provide better support. The team spent a year researching existing provision from health visiting to breastfeeding advice to talking therapies to parenting groups, and select committees held detailed inquiries into the impact of early years experiences on later outcomes. There is no doubt that a focus on this area could be life-changing for millions. So resigning as Commons leader last summer was a tough decision, driven by my concern that the withdrawal agreement bill, as then proposed, with the potential for a second referendum, would not have delivered our exit from the EU. As leader, I would have had to bring that bill forward, and I couldn't in all conscience do so. I was sorry to see the resignation of my right honourable friend for Maidenhead, the leadership of our country and party once again being challenged by the decision on the EU. No one could have worked harder than her, and I feel sure history will judge her kindly. In the new leadership election, a number of candidates, myself included, supported by my great friends for Coventry and South Derbyshire, sought to offer a way forward for the country. But after defeat in the first round, I gave my wholehearted support to the Prime Minister. I genuinely believe he is the right person to seize the opportunities that await us outside the EU. And it was an honour to serve as Business Secretary in his first cabinet. Brexit readiness was the urgent priority, but setting a new, clear direction for BEIS was top of my agenda. With my ministerial team, we agreed our mission to build a stronger, greener, united kingdom. And to achieve that, our priorities: first, that the UK will lead the world in tackling global climate change; second, that we will solve the grand challenges facing our society; and third, that we will quite simply make the UK the best place in the world to work and to grow a business. And there's one key observation I would highlight from my 6 months in BEIS, and that is that our climate change ambitions are not just about doing the right thing, but I believe there's also a huge early mover advantage. UK science and innovation could make the UK green tech sector as big in years to come as UK financial services is today, and I'm confident that my right honourable friend will seize this opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, the last general election showed that when people said in 2016 that they wanted to leave the EU, they really did mean it. And I applaud the Prime Minister for his single-minded focus on getting Brexit done. For my own part, I will now focus my attention in Parliament on that third B, babies. And I look forward to renewing my passion for giving every baby the best start in life. And when the Prime Minister asked me to step aside, he also gave me his word that he will enable me to take forward the early years work. And I'm delighted that the wheels are in motion. And I want to heartily congratulate him and Carrie for their decision to do their own bit of early years research. Mr. Speaker, I will have... You saw that coming, okay. You didn't write it, however, Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I will, of course, continue to work hard for my fabulous South Northamptonshire constituency, and I do look forward to spending some more quality time with my family. It's been an incredible 10 years, and it ain't over yet. There is no greater honour than to serve community and country, and I will continue to do so with pride.
Christine Jardine, point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Since there have been further allegations today about the conduct of the Home Secretary, I wondered if the Secretary of State could advise, I wonder if the Speaker could advise on how Parliament could initiate a genuinely independent inquiry into the conduct of the Home Secretary towards civil servants in those departments. Thank you.
Can I just say, and thank you to the Honourable Lady for giving me notice of the question. Well, thanks for your note, Ben. Could have waited. I'm honestly grateful for giving me notice of the point of order. What I would say, it is not a point of order for me, as she well knows. I understand it's an attempt to raise what is a matter of debate and not for me as chair. No further points of order. We now come to presentations of bill. Wendy Chamberlain.
International Development Women's Sanitary Products Bill.
Second reading what day? 27th of March. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, okay, go this way. We now come to the We're now coming to the 10-minute rule motion. I call Mr Peter Bunn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in the bill to create a bank holiday on the Friday nearest to the 23rd of June each year. It will be called United Kingdom Day. My thanks to my excellent senior parliamentary assistant Jordan Ayres for his help in these remarks. In a recent Queen's speech, the government included an employment bill which is intended to protect and enhance workers' rights within the UK post-Brexit. One very important thing the government should be looking at when enhancing workers' rights are public holidays. In England and Wales, we only have eight public holidays annually. We have the lowest number of bank holidays throughout Europe. In Germany, they have 9, France 11, Poland 11, Italy 11, Greece 12, Belgium 12, Austria 13, Malta 14, and Cyprus 17. When ranking public holidays throughout the world, the UK is drastically low on that list, at 226 out of 246 countries. As the 5th largest economy in the world, as world-leading experts on medical research, financial services, aerospace technology, artificial intelligence, electronic systems, and much more, it is time the government recognised the tremendous work carried out by British people. If we are serious about wanting enhanced workers' rights, then let's at least create one extra bank holiday. Now, critics will argue that businesses will have to absorb an extra day of paid leave for the workers. However, every 4 years, due to the leap year, millions of people up and down the country already work an extra day for free on February the 29th. Now, I've spent more than 30 years in business, Mr Speaker, and anyone who runs a business knows that the success of the business is not down to them, but is the quality and productivity of their employees. Companies don't succeed by making workers work as many hours as possible. They succeed if their employees are happy and productive. Apart from Northern Ireland, there are no bank holidays between May and August. By having a bank holiday in June, it will help break up that long gap between May and August. Workers will have a day off to look forward to, at a time when the weather should be good. This will not only have a positive effect on their health and well-being, but it will be a great boost to their productivity, which in turn will help businesses to thrive and prosper. Now, there are a number of reasons why the Friday nearest to the 23rd of June each year should be the new bank holiday, and I will set out my reasons. First, the second Monday in June is Her Majesty's official birthday. As the longest-serving monarch in our history, this will be a fantastic opportunity to celebrate her service and dedication to our great country. Also, the Queen was crowned in June. Throughout that time, she has been a steadfast and devoted monarch. It will be fitting to allow the people of the United Kingdom to celebrate Her Majesty's birthday, all her wonderful achievements, and how she guides the country through all its highs and lows. Mr Speaker, since 2003, the 23rd of June has already been recognised as United Nations Public Services Appreciation Day. This is a wonderful opportunity to pay tribute to the fantastic people who work in our public services, the people who work in our National Health Service, the Armed Forces, the Police, the Fire Service, in our schools and all the many, many others, all who are unsung heroes. Unfortunately, this has been barely recognised in the United Kingdom, and I believe it is time we corrected that. Millions of people devote their lives to public service and make great sacrifices for the good of this country. They deserve our thanks and recognition for their services, and by having this public holiday, we will be doing just that. And of course, Mr Speaker, the 23rd of June 2016 is the day when the United Kingdom voted on our membership of the European Union. It was the largest democratic participation this country has ever seen, with 33,551,983 people voting in that referendum. According to the Office for National Statistics, that is higher than the whole of the UK workforce. During the referendum, I worked alongside the Honourable Member for Corby and Councillor Helen Harrison, travelling the lengths and breadths of the United Kingdom on behalf of the cross-party campaign group Grassroots Out. Whether we were in Glasgow, Newport, Belfast or London, whether the people we met were big Brexiteers or real Remainers, the public were energised. Fundamentally, the people of the United Kingdom were engaged. For the first time, many felt that their vote really mattered. In fact, for many people, they voted for the first time. And whether they felt happy or sad about the outcome, nothing in history has invigorated the country as much as that political debate. The outcome of that vote has changed our relationship with Europe forever. We did not do this through revolution. We did not do this through war. We did not do this through violence. Millions of people did not lose their lives. Instead, it was done peacefully. It was done through the ballot box. I can remember the Cameron government saying that the people aren't interested in the EU. We should stop banging on about Europe. How wrong could they be? Turning to the current government, they have been, well, quite sniffy about my bill to create a new bank holiday entitled United Kingdom Day. This has rather surprised and disappointed me. I can understand the former government having reservations, as they always saw the UK leaving the EU as a duty, not an opportunity. Whereas this government wholeheartedly believes in it. So my question to them would be, why not mark this great democratic event? Finally, Mr Speaker, why don't we celebrate our United Kingdom? We don't have a day to celebrate that. Many countries throughout the world celebrate their national day with a public holiday. For example, in France, they have Bastille Day. Canada have Canada Day. In Sweden, they have National Day of Sweden. And in the US, of course, they have Independence Day. And Australia. There is no day in the year where we celebrate the union of our great four nations as one United Kingdom. I believe this should be corrected, and the people of this country should be able to come together and rejoice as one.
Where's the SNP?
Now, Mr Speaker, I do not believe there is anyone in our great United Kingdom who does not support either the monarchy, the referendum, our public services or the union. They surely support at least one of these. But, Mr Speaker, if there are a handful of people who reject all these things, well, of course, they can always work on United Kingdom Day.
Yeah. The honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Mr John Barron, Sir Christopher Jope, Philip Davis, Dr Julian Lewis, Andrew Rossendale, Nigel Mills, Esther McVeigh, Graham Stringer, Henry Smith, Sammy Wilson, Mr William Ragg and myself.
Yeah.
Mr Peter Bell.
June Bank Holiday Creation Bill.
Second reading what day?
Well, I thought, Mr Speaker, it would be appropriate if we made it Friday the 26th of June, which of course would be United Kingdom Day this year.
Friday the 26th of June as a possibility. We now come to the